Hey, up, right, motorcycle customization, modification, whatever you want to call it. I've been making videos about how to sort of improve the look of your motorcycle, or improve the performance, or improve the comfort of your bike, right since the very beginning of this channel, because I'm a motorcyclist. That's what I've always done, and a lot of other motorcyclists that I know, that's what they've always done. As I see it, it's all part of being a motorcyclist. It's part of human nature, taking something that's not quite perfect and trying to perfect it. If we didn't have that in our DNA, we'd all still be living in caves, marvelling over the discovery of fire. It's all part and parcel of the behaviour that has driven the human race to succeed and to get where it is now. Now, whenever I make that sort of video, I always get a variety of questions on similar themes. So I thought what I would do today is try and deal with those questions in a video. And I'm just dealing with the most common questions or comments. I'm maybe not going to cover absolutely everything. Now, one thing I do want to get out of the way before we begin is this notion, this naive notion that myself and other YouTube channels are paid huge amounts of money by the companies that make these parts in order to create an advert. Now, I'm not using the word naive to be insulting towards those people. I'm using the word naive because it is naive. A lot of the products that I review on this channel are by myself. Some I am given for the purposes of a review. Now, that sounds really attractive to your average person that, you know, perhaps struggles to be able to afford parts for their bike. But I have a rule in that if I'm given a part or a product free of charge for the purposes of the review, I just use it for the review and that's it. And quite often these products are only a temporary fitment because something else will come along that replaces it. But my rule is, once that review's been carried out and that part is perhaps taken out of service, I do not sell them because I think that is dishonest. Where possible, I give them away to viewers that, you know, contribute in the comments section on my videos on a regular basis, especially if they live locally, because, you know, posting stuff out becomes a logistical nightmare. Other than that, I just store them and they don't see the light of day again. They're of no financial gain to me. I can't pay my mortgage with them, I can't eat them. They just become dead weight. I've only ever done one paid review for a sat-nav about 6 years ago. Other than that, I do not take money from any manufacturer or retailer in order for me to produce a video for their products. The only way I make money from these videos is through the adverts that are shown at the beginning, throughout, and at the end of the video, which everybody also complains about. Right, so now that's out of the way, let's get our teeth into the main part of this video. Now, the most popular sort of comment or question that I get, and I think I can probably split it up into two categories, is why buy a new motorcycle and then modify it? You know, you've spent £4,000, £5,000, £6,000 on a brand new motorcycle and then immediately you start pulling bits off it, which obviously you've paid for in the purchase of that bike, and you start replacing them with other parts that cost you even more money. You know, the commenter just doesn't understand the concept of doing that. Now, the thing is, a motorcycle is, in a lot of ways, an unadjustable mode of transport. It's very different from a car in that, you know, in a car you can alter the height of the steering wheel or the angle of the steering wheel. You can alter your mirrors with a little button inside so that you've got a perfect view behind you. You're sitting in a very comfortable seat, which again is multi-adjustable. You can adjust it to go up, down, backwards, forwards, even the tilt, so you can get an exact fit for your body. You can't do that with a motorcycle. Now, over sort of more than 4 decades of motorcycling, I've owned a lot of different categories of bikes, and I eventually, over the last decade, settled on the modern classic. Because for me, it's just the perfect all-round, if you like, genre of motorcycle. Also, there are a lot of third-party and manufacturer options for adapting them. You see, I see any modern classic motorcycle not as a complete finished product, but as a blank canvas, a starting point. You know, I hear a lot of people in the comments section telling me, oh, you know, I really love this particular bike, you know, bike A. But when I took it out for a test drive, I just couldn't get on with the rear suspension. So in the end, I settled for bike B because it was a little bit more comfortable. The rear shocks were a lot better. And it's not just the, you know, the suspension that alter people's buying decisions. It can be the seat, the height of the handlebars. And when I look at a bike like that, if I really love it, I just assess whether or not alterations can be made to suit it to me better. You know, a set of shocks for a couple of £100, a set of bar risers or different handlebars. Are there alternative seats available? I look at it from that perspective, in that I can adjust the bike by, you know, making further purchases along the line to make it suit me. I would rather buy a bike that I really love, knowing that I can make some alterations to it, than buying a bike that I just think is okay, but, you know I don't have to spend any money on it. And I've got no idea what the percentage is, but I know that there are thousands of other motorcyclists who think along exactly the same lines. And it's not just practical modifications. They enjoy making modifications which to them makes the bike look better. They enjoy making modifications which just improve the performance a little bit. And it might not be by much, but it's the enjoyment of carrying out those modifications that are important, not the end result. Sometimes we make our bikes worse. It's an enjoyable process of trial and error, a hobby that allows you to stamp your personality onto the machine that you're riding. And let's face it, most hobbies cost money, whether it's collecting stamps or building train sets, you know, they cost a lot of money that you don't always get a return on in the end. You will, without a doubt, lose money when you carry out these sort of modifications, but, you know, that's the cost of your hobby. It's the cost of the enjoyment that it gives to you. Now, the second part of this sort of subject is, you know, a lot of these motorcycles, especially the ones that I feature on this channel, the Royal Enfields and the BSAs, are relatively cheap motorcycles. They don't cost an awful lot, and what some people struggle to understand is, why would you buy a £4,000 motorcycle and then spend another £1,000 or £2,000 sticking extra bits on it? You know, they just don't understand it. And strangely, they see this as, you know, you're not going to get a return on that investment. The bike is still going to be worth less second hand, even with those bits on it. So why would you do it? Well, yeah, I mean, no motorcycle is an investment. You are hemorrhaging cash the moment that you sign up for it. If you think any new motorcycle is a sound financial investment, you need to go and see a psychiatrist, because they'll lose money faster than any other mode of transport, even if you leave them original and bog standard. And actually, it makes more sense to me to buy a cheap motorcycle and modify it than it does to buy an expensive motorcycle and modify it. Just as an example, the last GS 1200 Adventure that I bought, I had it for 18 months, 2 years, and I lost £8,000 when I traded it in. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. I knew that was going to happen when I bought it. That is the cost of ownership. Now, if you buy a £4,000 motorcycle, spend £2,000 modifying it, then sell it on for £3,000, you've only lost £3,000. If you only get £2,000 for it, you've still only lost £4,000. That's just the cost of the ownership of a motorcycle these days. Now, what they often fail to take into account is that all of these modifications are completely reversible. You can return your bike back to sort of as delivered condition by simply unbolting those parts that you've fitted and putting the originals back on, then you can clean up those custom parts that you've removed, stick them on eBay and probably make half your money back. So it's nowhere near as bad as people always envisage it's going to be. And for me, the enjoyment of sort of carrying that conversion out during the time I've had that motorcycle is priceless. And that actually leads us on to another question or comment that frequently comes up on these videos, where people sort of say, you know, well, I like to leave my bike standard because when it comes to me selling it, I'll get more money for it. You know, putting these parts on it, fitting these parts on it, devalues it, because a lot of dealerships, if they're taking it in part exchange, don't like custom parts. They like a standard bike. Well, that's true. But I've just answered that question for you. I mean, I don't think there is a single modification I've made during the lifetime of this channel that is not reversible. So if it comes to selling the bike, you spend a couple of hours with a spanner taking those parts off and putting the originals back on. And I always say in every video, always retain your old parts, because you may need to refit them at a later date. I put the original parts on, and actually the bike ends up looking a little bit better than it would have done if those parts had been on for the duration of your ownership and had weathered and aged. They're effectively brand new because they've been stored away safely in a box somewhere for months. And that even applies to things like exhaust systems. You know, if you fitted it, you can take it off and put the original back on. So I don't understand why that is a barrier for some people. You know, you sell your bike back as original, you get top dollar for it, and then you've got a little collection of parts that, again, you can stick on eBay and make some of that money back. So your loss isn't as heavy as people always envisage it's going to be. I mean, this is a bit of a wild card. Just going back to that JS Adventure, I fitted a fender extender to that, one that was very highly regarded, and by the time I came to selling the bike, I took it off to sell it on eBay. They'd gone out of production, and I actually sold that for more than I bought it for new. Alright, that's a rare occasion. Things like that are not going to happen very often, but it's not always as bad as you think it's going to be. But I think this scenario often comes into play when, you know, a guy settles for bike B instead of getting the bike that he really wanted, bike A, because he doesn't want to mess around with its originality. You know, all of these things are reversible. You shouldn't regard modifying a motorcycle as a one-way street. We are in the age of catalogue custom parts now. You know, they're just bolt-on accessories that can equally be unbolted and the originals put back on. I never criticise anybody with the philosophy that they want to leave the bike original for whatever reason, although I do sometimes feel that perhaps they are missing out on something. Now, another regular comment or question, especially when it comes to things like air filters and exhaust systems, is, you know, will this cause damage to my bike? Will I have to get a Fuel X for my bike after I've fitted that exhaust or that, you know, free flow air filter? Will the bike have to be remapped? Now, in a way, this is really outdated thinking. You know, it does sometimes mystify me that people haven't got up to speed with the way things are nowadays. Since 2015, the EU mandated that all motorcycles must have learning ECUs or adaptive ECUs. So any motorcycle manufacturer that wanted to sell his products in the European Union had to fit learning ECUs to the bikes, and they're fitted to these bikes whether it's sold in Europe, the UK, Australia, America, it doesn't matter. They're all fitted with them now, and they've all had them installed since 2015. Now, there are a lot of reasons that were put forward for this mandate to be put in place. One of it was that you know, some manufacturers were selling exhaust systems that required the bike to be remapped to run properly, and manufacturers were charging an arm and a leg for the remapping. Exhaust systems and air filters don't last forever, especially if the exhaust system is mild steel that's been chromed. They can rot out in 5 or 6 years if the bike's used regularly. And a replacement might not be to the original manufacturer's specification. So these adaptive ECUs were brought in to ensure that whatever was fitted to the bike, it would run optimally, it would use the least amount of fuel, and it would emit the least amount of noxious emissions, without the need for the owner to have the bike remapped, because let's face it, a lot of cash-strapped bikers probably wouldn't bother. And the ECU makes changes to the way the engine's running according to the information that it receives through the O2 sensor, which is fixed on your header pipe of your exhaust. So as long as you retain your O2 sensor and it's working properly, there's no need to remap your bike, and your bike engine will not be damaged by that exhaust or air filter that you've fitted, particularly if you follow the acclimatization procedure straight after fitting that part, which I've shown on this channel many times. Now, as far as things like booster plugs and Fuel X goes, they do have their advantages in richening the mixture up. Modern motorcycles do tend to run hot because there are lean burn engines, and again, this is all down to EU mandates and the Euro emissions standards. Something like one of these devices might allow your engine to run a little bit cooler. It might even give you a little bit extra power. Because there's no doubt about it, Euro emission standards have crippled the performance of motorcycles, and I've got no doubt in my mind that the hotter temperatures that they tend to run at will shorten the lifespans compared to, motorcycles of 20 years ago. But, that's just life, that's how things are. But providing the exhaust system or air filter that you've fitted is made by a reputable company that have done proper research and development, no harm will come to your bike because you've fitted them. Now, as far as the legalities of these sort of components are concerned, I'm not going to discuss it. That is entirely up to you to sort of do your research and decide whether, do a sort of risk assessment, decide whether or not you are prepared to fit something like that. Now, let's move on to the warranty, especially when fitting these sort of components or any components to your motorcycle. A lot of people are worried that it will invalidate the warranty. To be quite honest with you, I don't put an awful lot of faith in warranty. I always look at my statutory rights, and my statutory rights say that if a motorcycle is less than 6 years old and it develops a fault, and this applies to the UK and the European Union, the person that sold your bike, the dealership that sold you that bike, is responsible for rectifying that fault. Now, it's a complicated legislation. I'm just talking very generally here. You are protected in a big way against defects in a bike. The warranty is actually just an add-on to that. In fact, I would say your statutory rights are far more powerful than a warranty is. Despite what your motorcycle dealership would like you to believe, you have no contract with the manufacturer of that motorcycle. That motorcycle has been sold to the dealership, and the dealership has sold it to you. So the contract is between you and the dealer. He is responsible for any faults occurring on that motorcycle, and if he wants to contest that fault has developed as a result of something you've done, he would have to present that evidence to a court to prove that you did it and that it wasn't a fault with the merchandise that is sold to you. And this applies to servicing the motorcycle yourself. So where most motorcycle manufacturers are concerned, they will not invalidate a warranty because you've fitted some additional parts to your bike. Some will, and I think KTM was a company that was often mentioned for doing this. I think they've gone out of business now. I don't know whether that was linked or not. But certainly Triumph, Royal Enfield, and the vibes I'm getting from BSA is that they have a very relaxed attitude towards you fitting parts to your bike. Now, I think you have to be sensible here. If it comes to doing some intrusive work on the engine, you're on a sticky wicket if you fit in, hot cams and stuff like that. I think any invasive work on the engine itself or the wiring system will undoubtedly put you in a position where if damage occurs because of it, you're not going to have a leg to stand on. But I think that's just common sense, because you've structurally altered the engine. I mean, when it comes to electrical components now, most reputable parts manufacturers, I mean, Motorn springs to mind, they supply you with plug and play systems. They're not invasive. You don't have to chop into wiring. They simply plug into the wiring system, replacing the part that's been removed. I mean, I know from a lot of people that I've spoken to where Triumph is concerned, most dealerships will happily buy Motorn parts in and fit them for you at the point of purchase. So, by and large, you shouldn't have any issues, but, you know, fair is fair. If you know that you've done something to that bike that's likely to damage it, you've got nobody to blame but yourself, and again, it's up to you to make a risk assessment of what you're doing, and don't try to blame it on the bike or the manufacturer, you know, because you've made a cock-up, basically. Right, finally, insurance. Will fitting custom parts to your bike alter your insurance or invalidate your insurance? Now, I change insurance companies quite regularly. I always go to whoever can provide me with the cover that I need for the least amount of money. I've always mentioned to them that the bike has been modified, and you know, when I start giving them a list, they simply turn round and say, oh, it doesn't matter, we're not bothered. Generally speaking, they only seem to have an issue if you've structurally altered the bike in some way. You know, you've had the bike bored out, or had some you know, some hot cams fitted, or you've actually chopped into the frame of the bike. That seems to be the only time that they have an issue with the insurance or granting you insurance. Now, I know there are insurance companies out there who are very finicky about you fitting anything to your bike. Personally, I've never come across any myself. You know, I can only go by what some viewers have told me about. So I know there are some insurance companies out there that can be awkward. I mean, the thing is, just be upfront and speak to your insurance company about it. They might cancel your insurance and you have to find someone else. They may charge you an additional fee on top of what you're already paying, but I personally have never come across this. So I hope that has answered most of your questions regarding sort of altering, accessorising, customising your motorcycle, whatever you want to call it. It's an immensely enjoyable sort of pastime, you know, spannering away on your motorcycle and fitting bits that you think make it look a little bit better, or bits that you think make it go a little bit better, or bits that make it more comfortable. You know, it's all down to the individual, but it can be a very enjoyable pastime. And I think it's maybe just a product of this internet era on forums and YouTube channels, etc., where to get attention and to get clicks, they want to frighten everybody, they want to sound the alarm. You know, if you do this, you're going to ruin your bike. If you do that, it's going to make your bike worthless. If you do the other thing, your insurance is going to be invalid, or, you know, you're going to break your bike and your warranty won't cover you. The internet just seems to be packed full of scaremongers these days. You know, enjoy the bike, do what you want to do, and enjoy doing it. Obviously, do your due diligence in any modification that you want to make, and, you know, make sure that you've thought about it carefully, but stop overthinking it. Right, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this and my other videos, and in doing so helping to support this channel. I really do appreciate it. I'd also appreciate it if you would leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already a subscriber. Now, you can help me out in other ways via my Patreon page or via PayPal donations. The details on how to do that are in the video description down below, or you could just use the super thanks button just below the video that you're watching now. There's no obligation, I just see it as an opportunity to leave me a tip if you've enjoyed my content. I am of course going to be back on Friday, so until then, please ride safely and I'll see you soon.